Welcome to PCC 289M Module 9. You made it. It is the last module, and soon the term will be over. And so in the last module, we talked about implementing the Active Directory certificate services, basically installing the role, what PKI is, those kinds of things. But now we're going to talk about implementing those directory services. So we're going to go a little bit deeper in. So let's take a look at implementing. So after installing the role of certificate services on the server, you might perform several configuration tasks. You've got to configure the certificate templates. You've got to configure enrollment options, the online responder, and the revocation configuration, so when a certificate's been revoked. If you install an enterprise CA, a number of predefined certificate templates can be configured, which is really helpful. 2016 supports 4 versions. The version 1 templates supported by 2003, version 2, 3, and 4, all the way through Windows Server 2012. So certificate templates are created and modified in the certificate templates snap-in. So if you go to MMC and you add the certificate templates, you can see all these different template names. Common certificate type is one for the encrypting file service. Allows users to encrypt and decrypt files on a hard drive. So EFS has been around for a long time. And starting in 2012, it got much better, much more secure, and it uses this EFS template. And what it does for you is it uses a certificate to encrypt your data. So if you lose the certificate, you won't be able to get your data back unless you back up the keys or create an Active Directory recovery certificate as well. So the EFS recovery agent template is what I was just talking about, is used to issue certificates to users who are designated as recovery agents. So I've had many times where the EFS certificate that was used to encrypt something disappears for whatever reason, gets modified, deleted, changed, and it can no longer decrypt the files. So you want to have the recovery agent in order to have that backup person to be able to decrypt files when needed. So here's the EFS recovery agent properties. You can see the template name is EFS recovery. You've got a 5-year validity. I like to change that to like 50 years, so you don't never have to worry about it getting expired. And then you have the renewal period. I also like to publish it in the certificate in Active Directory so it's easier to find. Certificate enrollment occurs when a user or device requests a cert and the cert is granted. Enrollment can occur with different methods. You've got the auto-enrollment. You could go into the certificates MMC, which you just saw, Web Enrollment, network device, and smart card enrollment as well. So when auto-enrollment is configured, users and devices don't have to make explicit certificate requests. This is most commonly used with EFS. So you don't want to be prompted for a certificate request when you go to decrypt a file. You just want it to happen. Auto-enrollment is enabled in the computer configuration or user configuration of group policies. So you got to make some group policy changes to make that work. Auto-enrollment is configured for certificate templates in the request handling, issuance requirements, and security tabs of a templates property dialog. So here's what that looks like. Enrollment policy configuration, you want to enable it. You can check the box for renew expired certificates if you want, update certificates that use certificate templates, and you have the log expiry events and show these notifications when the certificate lifetime is at its end. So we also have here under the request handling, you can enroll the subject without requiring any user input. And this is the easiest way for a user when they're using certificates because they won't get prompted. Then you've got requiring the following for enrollment, a CA certificate manager approval. Typically this isn't used, but you can use it if you want to really irritate people. The number of authorized signatures, and then you can require following for re-enrollment as well. Now we've got request handling. Follow the settings in the certificate template if applicable, otherwise automatically issue the certificate. Or you can set the certificate status to pending. Typically we want to leave this leave the settings in the certificate template. That way it makes it much easier to deal with. Users can request certificates that aren't configured for auto-enrollment by using the certificate snap-in. So it's only used if you set up an enterprise certification authority. Auto-enrollment is preferred over manual requests unless you want to get a lot of phone calls. If you're lonely, That may be a good way to deal with that by having a lot of people call you. You force them to call you. You might want to use manual requests if the following is true. You want users to know their certificate information. You have specialized templates that only a few users require, or you're lonely. All right, so requesting a certificate with a certificate snap-in. So here's requesting certificates. You can go ahead and click the Active Directory enrollment policy that you want to have. So let's say it's the basic EFS. So you're going to check that box, click on the details, and then configure your certificate. So configuring web enrollment requires installing the certification Web Enrollment role service. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Web enrollment is the main method for accessing certificate authority services on a standalone CA. To access the CA Web Enrollment role service, you've got to open a browser and browse to the server's page. Server configured for web enrollment is called a registration authority, or a CA web proxy. Not a lot of people use that in Active Directory for web enrollment. If they want to use a public certificate, they typically get a public certificate from a Network Solutions or GoDaddy type of a place. But if you want to do it internally, the only real advantage to this is that you don't have to pay for it because it's already included. There's a lot of work involved to make this work, so it's a diminishing return. It's better just to pay the $50 a year rather than set this up just for websites. But if you want to, it's there. Network Device Enrollment Service allows network devices such as routers and switches to obtain certificates by using simple certificate enrollment, a Cisco proprietary protocol. Don't see this a lot out in the real world, but you will need to know this for tests, quizzes, certifications, things like that. Cisco devices can request and obtain certificates to run IPsec even if they don't have the domain credentials. Smart cards. I do see smart cards a lot out there in the industry. Takes place through web enrollment at a smart card station. User supplies the credentials to request the smart card certificates. User designated as an enrollment agent can enroll the smart card certificates on behalf of the users. AD Certificate Services offers restricted enrollment agents. So if you want to make someone an enrollment agent without giving them the full access to administrator of the domain, then you can create them as well. Configuring the online responder. An online responder enables clients to check a certificate's revocation status. So why would a certificate get revoked? Well, it might expire, might have been compromised, and you need to replace all of them, or it might have been corrupt. It requires that you do restart the web service role. So here is your revocation configuration, and you've got CRL publication interval is in 1 week, publish Delta CRLs in 1 day. So it tells the CA what methods are available for clients to access the list. To create the revocation configuration, you use the AD Certificate Services snap-in, and then you can go ahead and see this box to configure it. Now, maintaining and managing the public key infrastructure. So that's where you have a public key and a private key. By default, administrators can perform all tasks on a CA server. After you install the role, administrators can perform only tasks related to their assigned roles. So there's 4 key roles: the administrator, certificate manager, backup operator, and auditor. So backing up and restoring the certificates, you can do a regular backup of all servers in a network. It's mandatory. Full backup or system state backup automatically backs up the certificate. So if you're already running a system state backup, you're good. CA Console includes a simple wizard, so you can back these things up manually if you would like, and it backs up the public key and the certification authority, as well as the certificate database and the log. And you can use certutil as the command to restore it. And I'm sure there's a PowerShell command as well, but it's not listed here. If a user's private key is lost or damaged, you might lose access to the system or the document, especially if we're talking about the EFS, encrypted file service. By using key archival, private keys can be locked away and then restored if a user's private key is lost. So there's 2 methods of archiving the private keys: manual, where you export the certificate with the keys, or automatic, using a key recovery agent, which we talked about earlier in this module, where you set up a key recovery agent person ahead of time, which is a different person that also has the ability to decrypt or use the certificates. The certificate export wizard exports the certificate, and it can export the private key if allowed. Not all certificates can export the private key. You're prompted to select the format of the certificate export. The only format supported for exporting the private key is the personal information exchange. So here's what it looks like if you do an export of the certificate. So you'll see the personal information exchange, PFX file, that's what the extension is at the end, and it includes all certificates in the certification path. So this is the default that you would usually do for exporting. Automatic key archival uses a key recovery agent, which is a designated user with the right to recover these archive keys. They have a lot of power, so you got to choose that user carefully. By default, the administrator, of course, is going to be able to do that. The designated user must enroll for a key recovery certificate after the KRA template has been configured to allow the designated user to enroll. So even the administrator doesn't have the ability to recover anything until you set that person up as a KRA. And you can use other users as KRAs as well. So here's your recovery agents. You can archive the key or not archive the key. Number of recovery agents to use is set to 1, and then it shows the certificate in the list. So you can also use PowerShell to manage Active Directory certificate services, as I mentioned earlier. They didn't list it before, but it does now. So here's a list of all the different PowerShell commands and what each of them does. You might see some of these on your quiz. So take a look at that and remember where this is. So to summarize, our Module 9, Active Directory Certificate Services, provides services for public key infrastructure. And there's all different kinds of terms that we went over. Active Directory Certificate Services role is installed in Server Manager and should not be installed on Domain Controller, but we're going to do it that anyway. It just adds an additional security issue. It's not a functional issue. And then there's automatic certificate enrollment as well as manual enrollment we talked about as well. And we can also back up our certificates on the Certificate Authority server. So that's going to do it for our 289M class. Hope you learned a lot, make you all prepared for your job out there. And of course, you can always contact me either before class is over, after class is over. Be happy to give you any advice out there from my experience in the business and the industry. And go ahead and email me or call whenever you need to. So thanks for being part of our 289M class, and I hope to see you again very soon.